Hello and welcome to Hipaa Compliance Training. This is part 2 of a 3-part series. Today, part 2 will be dealing with understanding the security aspect of Hipaa compliance. I do ask that you pay attention today, for you're actually going to be tested later on in the materials presented. Now, this training seminar program is intended to provide you with a basic and general understanding of the Hipaa security rule. This program is not intended to be an all-encompassing and completely inclusive course on the Hipaa security rule. You should actually regularly review your practice's HIPAA's policies and procedures for further comprehension and knowledge of HIPAA. And any questions that you may have regarding the HIPAA security rule or any other portions of HIPAA should immediately be brought to the attention of your practice's HIPAA security officer. And this is not legal advice. See, the information provided today is strictly for educational purposes only, and is not, nor is it intended to be, considered or interpreted in any manner whatsoever as legal advice. This is also not a one-and-done type of compliance program. Now, what I mean by that is simply by attending this seminar or watching this video, in no manner whatsoever provides a guarantee of compliance with HIPAA. At a minimum, continuous compliance with HIPAA requires an ongoing and active implementation of your practice's HIPAA policies and procedures, as well as current updates, reviews, and maintenance of your policies and procedures, the regular training and testing of your workforce members, the testing of your implemented security and privacy safeguards, and performing an annual risk analysis. So therefore, what I mean is, more work actually still needs to be done. You see, although informative and educational, this training seminar is not intended to replace nor substitute the necessity for an ongoing internal HIPAA training and testing of your workforce members, as well as regular review and updates as needed and necessary of your HIPAA policies and procedures. Continued maintenance of your compliance program is mandatory. So this training seminar is just one aspect of your overall HIPAA compliance program. SMB Networks provides HIPAA compliance program materials and training seminars to your practice. And please understand that no representative of SMB Networks is acting as a security compliance officer or any other type of compliance officer for that matter for your practice. It's therefore incumbent upon your practice, as well as mandated by HIPAA, to designate a security officer. Your practice's HIPAA security officer must familiarize him or herself with HIPAA and all of the required rules and regulations. And there's certainly more than meets the eye today. While every effort has been made to facilitate an effective and well-designed HIPAA compliance training seminar program, in the interest of time efficiency, some topics will need to be abbreviated and others, well, they won't be discussed at all. Also, there may be some exceptions in the HIPAA rules to the topics addressed today. Therefore, any and all questions you have regarding HIPAA should immediately be brought to the attention of your practice's HIPAA security officer. And before we get started, you might have some questions. You're probably asking, why am I even at this HIPAA training seminar program? Well, the answer to that is because you're a member of this practice's workforce. And a workforce member, pursuant to HIPAA, means an employee, a volunteer, a trainee, and any other persons whose conduct in the performance of work for a covered entity or business associate is under the direct control of such covered entity or business associate, regardless of whether or not they are paid by the covered entity or business associate. So the reason that you must attend this HIPAA training seminar is because HIPAA applies to your employer, and HIPAA actually requires your employer to provide this HIPAA training. But most importantly, you, as a member of your employer's workforce, HIPAA applies directly to you. Now, the HIPAA security rule states that your practice must implement a security awareness and training program for all workforce members. And yes, upper management and senior management, this means you as well. And please understand, regardless of the size of your practice, you must comply with HIPAA. There are no exceptions nor exclusions for the size of a covered entity or a business associate. Some abbreviations that I'll be using today. CE for covered entity, BA for business associate, BAA for business associate agreement, EPHI for electronic protected health information, IIHI, individually identifiable health information, and PHI for protected health information. HIPAA is the acronym for the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, which was passed by Congress back in 1996. It applies to both covered entities and business associates. It requires the protection and confidential handling of protected health information to protect the privacy and security of such information. Also requires covered entities and business associates to develop, implement, and enforce policies and procedures for the protection of individuals' PHI. Now, with these training seminars, there's basically 3 elements for you to be aware of in HIPAA: privacy, security, and enforcement. And for part 2 today, we're going to be dealing with HIPAA security, and accordingly, that will be the focus of this training seminar. So let's get started with the HIPAA security rule. The HIPAA security rule requires your practice, and you as a workforce member of this practice, to ensure the confidentiality and the integrity and the availability of all ePHI your practice creates, receives, maintains, or transmits. Now, by confidentiality, what I mean is that the ePHI is not made available or disclosed to an unauthorized persons or processes. The integrity means that the ePHI has not been altered or destroyed in any unauthorized manner. And the availability means that the ePHI is accessible and usable upon demand by an authorized person. HIPAA security rule also requires you and your practice to protect against any reasonably anticipated threats or hazards to the security or integrity of the ePHI. Also, protect against any reasonably anticipated uses or disclosures of such information that are not permitted or required under HIPAA privacy's rule. And finally, ensure the compliance of HIPAA security rule with all members of your workforce. So our focus today is on ePHI, Electronic Protected Health Information. And the security rule establishes a national set of security standards for protecting certain health information that is held or transferred in an electronic form. So, what is ePHI? Well, ePHI is a subset of protected health information that is transmitted by electronic media or maintained in electronic media. Quickly, just to let you know, there are some exclusions for protected health information. PHI excludes individually identifiable health information in some education records, in employment records held by a covered entity as in its role as an employer, and regarding a person who has been deceased for more than 50 years. So, if ePHI is a subset of PHI, what is PHI? Well, PHI means individually identifiable health information that is transmitted by electronic media, which is ePHI as we just saw, maintained in electronic media, which once again is ePHI as you just saw, or transmitted or maintained in any other form or medium, such as paper. So, protected health information has both electronic protected health information in it, and it has paper, physical if you will, protected health information. So you can have electronic protected health information which is stored on a computer. But yet you can also have a patient's file that you physically pick up and can flip through the pages. That's protected health information that is not electronic, but rather is in a physical form. It's transmitted or maintained in any other form or medium. Any other form or medium other than electronic, think of it as paper. Once again, I just give you this exclusion rule below. PHI excludes individually identifiable health information in some education records, in employment records held by a covered entity in its role as an employer, and regarding a person who has been deceased for more than 50 years. So if PHI is IIHI, what is IIHI? Well, individually identifiable health information is information that is a subset of health information, including demographic information collected from an individual, and it is created or received by a healthcare provider, such as, let's say, a medical office, or a health plan employer, or a healthcare clearinghouse, and it relates to the past, present, or future physical or mental health or condition of an individual, or the provision of health care to an individual, or the past, present, or future payment for the provision of health care to an individual. And that information identifies the individual, or with respect to where there is a reasonable basis to believe the information could be used to identify the individual. So here are some examples of protected health information. Now, once again, remember, PHI can be electronic or it can be in paper. These examples can be both electronic or just standard paper, physical. Encounter visit documentation, lab results, appointment dates and times, invoices, radiology films and reports, and history and physical reports. PHI also includes patient identifiers. And what I mean by that, that's information by which the identity of a patient can be determined with reasonable accuracy and speed, either directly or by reference to other publicly available information. Think like having two pieces of a puzzle. And one of the pieces of the puzzles is that you find something in a file. Another piece of the puzzle is something that you find on the internet, such as other publicly available information. Now, by themselves, those pieces, they may not make sense. The picture doesn't come together. But if you take that piece of the puzzle that you found in somebody's record, and then you take another piece of the puzzle that you found on the internet, again, publicly available information, and you put them together, if you can recognize the identity of the individual, you have the patient identifiers. So you have one identifier in a file, but yet you found something else online. See how you can piece that together to determine who this person is. That's not necessarily a good thing when it comes to breaches. Let me give you some examples of PHI. What would be considered as PHI pursuant to Hipaa? Individuals' names. All elements of dates, such as a birth date, a death date, admission date, discharge date, etc. Postal address information. Telephone and fax numbers. Email addresses. Social security numbers, medical record numbers, health plan beneficiary numbers, account numbers, certificate and license numbers. And here's one that a lot of people don't even realize. VIN numbers off of a car and serial numbers, including license plate numbers, device identifiers and serial numbers, web URLs, IP address numbers, biometric identifiers including finger and voice prints, full face photos and any comparable image, any other unique identifying numbers, characteristic, or codes that you can think of. So once again, when someone says, does that have any PHI in it? Take a look at these examples. What you may have thought was no may actually be yes, just by looking at some of these patient identifiers. So how can you and your practice protect ePHI within the practice? Well, the first step is to assign a security officer. Now, I'm sure your practice already has a security officer, and you should be familiar with your Hipaa security officer. If not, well, at the end of this training video, what I'd like you to do is go and inquire as to who your Hipaa security officer is and become well acquainted with them. See, your security officer is the person in charge of developing your practice's Hipaa security policies and procedures, as well as implementing and enforcing such policies and procedures. Your practice's security officer is your most important contact person for reporting any security incidents. And certainly if you have any questions regarding electronic protected health information or Hipaa security issues, well, immediately contact your practice's Hipaa security officer. The next step in protecting electronic protected health information within your practice is to simply abide by your practice's Hipaa security policies and procedures. Now, you should have already received a copy of your practice's Hipaa policies and procedures manual, but if you have not, once again, at the end of this training seminar video, please contact your practice's Hipaa security officer and inquire as to when you can get a copy of the practice's Hipaa policies and procedures manual. When you do get a copy of the manual, please review it in its entirety. Go through it and understand it. Let's talk about accessing and using electronic protected health information. I want you to understand something that's really important. Just because you're a member of this practice's workforce, that just doesn't automatically entitle you to access ePHI at your discretion. And the access to electronic protected health information should only be determined and granted and or provided by your practice's Hipaa security officer. Your security officer must implement policies and procedures to ensure that all workforce members have appropriate access to electronic protected health information, as well as preventing those workforce members who do not have access from actually obtaining access to the EPHI. So what that simply means is, while one practice may have many workforce members, all those workforce members may not have the same job duties and descriptions and titles. Accordingly, some job duties may require that that individual, that workforce member, have access to electronic protected health information. It may also require that some of the workforce members not have access to electronic protected health information because the jobs and the duties and the responsibilities and the tasks at hand don't actually require any sort of access to electronic protected health information. Well, in that instance, you don't have the access, and it shouldn't be granted to that workforce member. And the alternative, for those workforce members who do have the need to access electronic protected health information, there should be different levels. And what I mean by that is, if you have access or the authority to access electronic protected health information, you may or may not need to access an entire record. For instance, you may only need to access the record for a patient who is coming in today. And the job duties and descriptions may only require that amount of access. Your level of access would be limited then to any patient who is coming in today, and probably only for the purpose for what they're coming into today. Hypothetically, if you have another workforce member who can have access to all patients' electronic protected health information without any restriction, then they can look back as far as they want for this particular individual's protected health information. However, whenever they do access electronic protected health information of an individual, they should only be accessing it for the purposes of their job. What I mean by that is they shouldn't be snooping, and I'm going to go over that in greater detail as we go on today as well. See, once again, those workforce members whose job duties require access to electronic protected health information should be authorized to access electronic protected health information. They need it for their job description. They need it for the ongoing business practices of your office. And once again, workforce members who are authorized to access electronic protected health information, well, they should be assigned a unique name and or a unique number when accessing electronic protected health information. What does that do? Well, it serves the purpose of identifying and tracking user identity. And Hipaa actually wants your practice to track and audit who's going in and what's the purpose that they're going into, if you will, for the electronic protected health information. Also requires the user to correctly input their assigned unique name and or user number to provide and verify their identity. You certainly just don't want anybody to walk up to a computer, access electronic protected health information, and walk away, even if they do have the right to access electronic protected health information, because there's no system of tracking who was there and what they looked at. In addition to a unique username and number, you should also create a password for gaining access to electronic protected health information. So on one hand, we have a unique name and or number, so we know the identity. But then, did that person put in the correct password? So they knew who they were by putting it in, but making sure that there's an extra layer of protection or security by having the password is also even better. And if you are given a password, or the alternative, if you designate your own password, never ever provide that password to anyone else without prior specific permission of your practice's Hipaa security officer. And never keep any written passwords in areas where they can be accessed, viewed, or stolen. It's simply just best to memorize your password. You certainly do not want to be putting it on the bottom of your keyboard, behind your monitor, within your desk drawer, or any other place that's easily accessible by others, and they would kind of first want to look there to see if you do have a password. And your password, well, that should also be changed periodically, possibly every 90 days or even shorter, as well as whenever there's a security incident. So if in fact you had a rogue employee that went and stole electronic protected health information, or there was another security incident within your practice, well, quite frankly, everybody's password should be changed. It's like kind of changing the keys on the locks of the doors when there's a break-in or any other sort of security incident. And when creating a password, create a strong password by combining numbers, letters, symbols, etc. The more type of complex password that you have, the more secure that password will be. You simply don't want to have a 4-letter password such as PASS, or your password being password or the name of your practice, Certainly want to get a little creative and inventive there. And with regards to access to EPHI, if you aren't granted authorization to access EPHI, please understand, remember, that is an authorization granted to you and only you, and is not permission to allow you to provide nor authorize other workforce members to access EPHI. Do not ever give your access code or passwords to any other workforce members. Now you might say, well, that's simple. That's easy. Why would I ever do that? And here's how it happens. A lot of times there might be a workforce member who needs to access a computer quickly in order to get information. And when I say quickly, I'm not speaking of a medical emergency here. But they need to do something quickly within their job description. They may have forgotten their password, or their password is somewhere else where it shouldn't be. And they come to you and they ask you, what's your password? I just need to log in real quickly. Or are you logged into here right now? Yes, I am. Okay, I just need to get on here real quickly. Don't allow that. That's the same thing. Your password, your ID, your login onto a workstation is you. So if I'm one of these rogue employees, let's say, and I want to steal somebody's identity, or I want to steal their electronic protected health information, which right now the value of which is about $50 per medical record on the street. Well, if I ask you to go in and you allow me to basically essentially use all your characteristics and identifiers, when a log sheet is printed up later on, and if the breach is discovered, let's say, and by breach I mean I went and I stole people's individually or their individual identifiable health information, their protected health information, however you want to look at it, it's not going to show up that I was there, but rather that you were on the computer. And they're going to be looking at you because this was on your watch. So always remember, do not give your access code, your password, anything else that identifies you and allows you access to electronic protected health information. As nice as it seems that you're doing somebody a favor, tell them, look, I can't do that. Speaking of which, let's talk about security incidents. You must, and again, you must report to your security officer all security incidents that you cause, that you witness, or that you become aware of through other workforce members or individuals. What I mean by that is, let's say something happens that you did, and maybe you didn't do it intentionally, or maybe you did do it intentionally. You have to report that to your security officer. What if you witnessed something? You didn't cause it, you didn't do it, you just saw it. You happen to be in the area that something happened, and you know it's a security incident. Same thing. You must report it to your practice's security officer. Or you become aware of it. Now, you don't witness something, you don't cause something, but you're just sitting down and you're talking, and some of your workforce members, they mention something in passing, even jokingly, of what happened. But you recognize that that's a security incident. The fact that you didn't cause it, the fact that you didn't witness it, does not bar you or exclude you from still having to report it. You must report that to your security officer immediately. So let's talk about what is a security incident. A security incident means the attempted or successful unauthorized access, use, disclosure, modification, or destruction of information or interference with system operations in your your practice's information system. So think about that. The attempted or successful unauthorized access. If you see or hear of something that happens, someone says, you know what, I accidentally deleted something from somebody's file. Please understand, not only is that a security incident, but that could harm the patient. Imagine if whatever was redacted or erased or destroyed or whatever modified in their patient's record is something of a dire life-saving consequence to them. That if in fact another doctor that they are treating with doesn't know about it, think about how dire the consequences could be for them not being treated properly or given the wrong medication that interferes with their medical condition. So even if it was inadvertent or accidental or non-intentional, however you want to look at it, if it's still unauthorized, that is the destruction, the modification, report that immediately. And these can be intentional, and you may hear of people stealing stuff. Again, please report these security incidents to your privacy officer, your practice's security officer. So if you see or hear of something that you know or believe rises to the level of a security incident, or if you yourself committed an act which is a security incident, once again, please immediately report it to your practice's security officer. What you want to report is the security incident that you saw, heard, or did in great detail. Again, I can't stress the great detail. There's nothing as too much information when it comes to reporting. Do not attempt to correct or investigate the incident before reporting it. Do not attempt to correct or investigate the incident after reporting unless specifically instructed to do so by your practice's security officer. And if requested, please assist your security officer with documenting the security incident and its outcome. Now, a security incident also includes any malicious software, viruses, malware, spyware that you notice on your work computer. That also must immediately be reported to your practice's security officer. Now, you may go onto your computer one morning, or one afternoon, or whenever. A laptop, a phone, anything that you use to access electronic protected health information, or anything that is storing electronic protected health information. Let's in fact say that you see something that looks out of the ordinary. And it actually may be a virus. Maybe it's a glitch, maybe it's something that just doesn't seem right. Please don't ignore it. Please understand that you're not being nitpicky and just reporting everything to the security officer, but rather you're being diligent about what you are seeing. Because a virus that has been installed on your computer can actually wreak havoc by stealing all of the electronic protected health information that's on that computer. So again, if you see something, report it to your practice's security officer. Let's talk about emergencies. Unfortunately, emergencies are going to happen in every practice. By emergencies, I mean natural disaster, vandalism, fire, and system failures. In case of an emergency, don't panic. Your practice will have policies and procedures in place for responding to emergencies. In case of an emergency, there will be processes in place to all workforce members to be able to access an exact copy of the EPHI stored that the practice has. That's like a data backup. The practice will be able to restore any lost data in the emergency, such as data recovery. And the practice will be able to protect EPHI while operating during the emergency. See, you don't want the electronic protected health information to be vulnerable during this period of time. And Hipaa doesn't want the EPHI not to be accessible during this emergency. For the instance of an emergency, people may need a dire medical emergency treatment, and their records need to be accessed. Your practice may have to provide those records in the time of an emergency. So again, the fact that this data can be backed up, and by data I mean data containing electronic protected health information, the fact that it can be recovered, and the fact that it can be accessed and not tampered with during this emergency is of great importance. So during an emergency, look to your practice's security officer for guidance and direction before proceeding. Now let's switch to the physical areas and accesses or facilities containing electronic protected health information within your practice. So just think for a moment where your computers or the workstations are located. Those are areas that have electronic protected health information if in fact the computer, or what they call the workstation, or the laptop, which again could be your workstation, has access to or stores electronic protected health information. Now, your security officer will implement procedures which limit physical access of workforce members and authorize third parties such as business associates and contractors, repair personnel, etc., to actually access the practice's information systems, that's our computer servers, and the areas or facilities where they are housed, while ensuring that properly authorized access is allowed. Now, these facilities or these access points could be outside of your practice's actual office, such as a workforce member, if you are allowed to work from home, or other physical location where EPHI is accessed for your practice. Now, how does this apply to you? Well, while you're at work, if you see someone, such as a workforce member, a third-party individual not associated with your practice, that could be a repair individual, a visitor, a patient, anyone, that's in an area where EPHI is stored or can be accessed, let's say a server room, or in the alternative, just a computer, which would be again a workstation, or other physical location outside of your practice's office, and you do not believe or are not sure they have permission to be there, immediately report it to your security officer. If you're outside of the practice's location, just immediately call the office. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. If you're inside the practice, you know the area and the locations. If you see a patient walking around a computer or typing on a computer, well, that raises a really big red flag, and you want to inform that immediately to your practice's Hipaa security officer. Additionally, what if you see a workforce member that you know doesn't have access to electronic protected health information, and yet is typing on a computer that does have access to electronic protected health information? Well, report that also to your privacy officer. While that workforce member may have been there for the legitimate purposes of using just the computer and not accessing electronic protected health information, that's kind of really not your determination. That's not your judgment call. Rather, report it to the security officer. For in fact, it may not have been anything, but then again, it could have been. And also, if you're outside of the practice's location, but EPHI is accessed or used in that location, such as a home area. Let's say, for instance, you work from home and you are permitted to bring home a laptop. That laptop, and we'll go over this in greater detail, but that laptop is the workstation area. If you allow visitors to come back and forth and or family members to start using that laptop and they aren't allowed to, well, that could be a violation. That also has to be reported. Why? Because electronic protected health information beyond your knowledge may have been accessed and or used or disclosed, downloaded, anything of that sort. So again, if someone is in an area that they don't belong there, report it to your practice's Hipaa security officer. Please, if you see somebody that shouldn't be there, I'm not asking you to confront the individual. Rather, just immediately report your concerns to your security officer. You want to stay alert, you want to stay safe. Let's talk about your workstation. Pursuant to Hipaa, workstation means an electronic computing device, for example, a laptop or a desktop computer, or any other device that performs similar functions. Think of a tablet, an iPad. And electronic media is stored in its immediate environment. So, the workstation is there for only one purpose, to perform your job functions. And we're going to talk a little bit more about your workstation, but please keep this in mind. That workstation is there not for your social events and or calendar, but rather just for your own job duties and description. So you should only perform the proper functions of your job at your workstation. The reason being, inappropriate use of a workstation can expose your practice to unnecessary risks and vulnerabilities, such as virus attacks, hackers, malware, spyware, etc., which can compromise your practice's information systems and breach the confidentiality of the EPHI that your practice stores. So please, no web surfing on your workstation, no social networking, no downloading, and no music streaming. All of that can cause the infection of viruses, malware, and compromise the integrity, confidentiality, and availability of the electronic protected health information stored. When using your workstation, either at work or in the alternative if you can work remotely somewhere else or from home, think about the physical attributes of the surroundings of your workstation. Again, either in your practice's location or your home or another outside location. This must be addressed. Where is your workstation physically located? Is it in a secure location? Can others easily gain access to it? Can others easily view the screen with EPHI on it? So if you're at your home or you're at the office, where is the workstation physically located? If your workstation is physically located at the office in an area that has a lot of traffic of visitors and patients going by, and that monitor screen is facing those people walking by, is that really safe? Not really. I mean, you can turn that screen around if possible. And what if you can't turn the screen around because just the physical location that the monitor is in? Well, can it be moved somewhere else? And if the answer is still no, can you put up an actual physical screen guard, if you will, that when you walk by, it blinds anybody's view it distorts their view? Or can you have some sort of screen monitor up in place that immediately turns off when you're not utilizing the screen? Is the workstation in a secure location? Now think about this for a moment. If you have a server, if you have a laptop, if you have a desktop, and it's in a location in your practice that's easily accessible by other individuals, I mean visitors, patients, individuals who are coming on, such as delivery individuals or repair persons, can they just grab something and leave with it? If they can, it's probably not that secure. What about home? Where are you working from home? Again, is it in a secure location that somebody just couldn't walk in, grab it off of a table, whatever it is that you're accessing the electronic device, and leave? How about the mobility of the electronic device? Meaning, let's say you're permitted to take laptop off-site from your practice. How are you transporting that? Is it transporting it in your car in the front or back seat where everybody can see it if you have to stop and, let's say, get gas for your vehicle? Or in the alternative, is it locked in your trunk, not visible to anybody? And not only is it locked in your trunk, is there a cable that's attached to the device that's actually wrapped around something within your trunk, so that if your trunk was somehow opened, it might be a little bit more difficult for somebody to just grab it and run. Once again, can others easily gain access to the device? So are there any protections in place to avoid anybody just arbitrarily walking up and start typing on the computer? And like I said about the screen, think about the screen at home or at work. What can you do to the screen to distort view? Simply turning it around is one thing. Putting on a screen protector could be another. Physically protecting your workstation deals with the access to your workstation or any of your practice's workstation, on-site and off-site. You want to restrict access only to authorized users. Only workforce members duly authorized by your practice's security officer to access electronic protected health information should actually have access to workstations that contain or can access EPHI. So you're not going to have a guard standing in front of your workstation at all times and saying, "Let me see your credentials," but rather the credentials have to be typed into the device itself. And if the person doesn't have the proper credentials and they type them in, access should be denied immediately. Allowing access to a workstation containing or with the ability to access electronic protected health information should be protected with passwords and other user identifier safeguards, user IDs, etc., to ensure only authorized workforce members can and are appropriately using particular workstations. And like I said, once again, don't be giving your information out to anyone, because they can basically become you, conning the system, stealing whatever they have to, but yet going undetected as them, but rather it looks like you committed the crime. So let's talk about device and media controls real quickly. First and foremost, what I want you to understand is any device, any media control that you may be using, it could be a tablet, one of those all-in-one printer fax machines, just a computer CPU unit, those smartphones that everybody seems to have nowadays, just a regular standalone desktop computer, but everything is encompassed within that computer. How about a fax machine or just a laptop? The device and media controls that you have, I want you to always keep in mind to keep them secure when they are on you, whenever you are using them. So for instance, your smartphone, if you ever drop it or leave it somewhere, and it has the ability to access electronic protected health information, or it has electronic protected health information on there via emails or any other device or any other type of application that you may have on there, you want to make sure that you can immediately wipe that remotely, so that if anybody picks it up, anything that they have within the short period of time that you realize it was taken, stolen, lost, can be wiped. What you want to do is minimize, for any of these devices, the ability of somebody to improperly access electronic protected health information, that person doesn't have the right to access electronic protected health information. Now, I don't want you to believe that I'm suggesting that, well, if I remotely rewipe it, everything is good and done. No, there's a lot of things that have to take place in terms of whether or not a breach has occurred, but better to have it on the phone, or any other device for that matter, than not have it and yet need it. Now, we all know that any sort of electronic device is eventually going to run its course. And for instance, your practice may want to dispose of it for whatever reason. Maybe it just doesn't work anymore. It's just really old. It's not working as it used to. It's too slow, whatever. What I want you to remember and understand here is that you will never dispose of any electronic equipment until you are certain from your own IT department or third-party IT professionals that that device does not contain any electronic protected health information whatsoever. You see, electronic protected health information has a funny way of sticking around, even in places you had no idea existed. I want you to think of that delete button as something that just simply gets the information off your screen, but actually saves it to your computer, your laptop, your smartphone, printer, fax, copy, etc. You also should get written assurances that the electronic protected health information that was once on the electronic equipment has been destroyed or is inaccessible or unusable prior to the disposal. And you usually would get that from whomever is checking the device to ensure that there's no more electronic protected health information on there. And when I say whomever, you want to have somebody who knows what they're doing, like your IT department, or in the alternative, a third-party IT professional. Now, what about if you don't want to destroy? That is, get rid of the device. But you have to trade it in, and you certainly can't destroy the hardware within there, or the software programs, or anything of that sort. And the lease requires that this thing be returned, whatever it is, in good working fashion and order. Or in the alternative, you're not leasing it, you actually own it, but it works well. You just don't want it. You want a better model. And you think, let me do something nice and I'll donate it to a school or some other organization. And that's really great. But you can never trade in or any type of equipment that is leased or donate any equipment until you are certain, once again from your IT department or IT professionals, that it does not contain any electronic protected health information whatsoever. Because that copier, that fax machine, that printer, that all-in-one, that phone, whatever it is, just might contain electronic protected health information, which can easily be accessible by the new owner or user. Once again, get written assurances from your IT department or IT professionals that any and all electronic protected health information contained in electronic equipment has been completely erased or destroyed. I want to quickly talk about the minimum necessary rule. If you are granted authorization to access electronic protected health information, your authorization is strictly limited to the minimum necessary for accessing electronic protected health information. What that means is, do not ever access, use, disclose, or even request more electronic protected health information than what is minimally necessary to accomplish the purpose of the access, the use, the disclosure, or the request of electronic protected health information. So for instance, if somebody sends an authorization into your office and they want to get their protected health information, their medical records, from a certain period of time to an ending certain period of time, let's say from June 1st to September 1st, and they want you to send that information to their attorneys, you cannot access more information. You cannot use more information. You cannot disclose or send more information to their attorneys other than what they want. So if you go into their file, into their chart, and this is all online, electronic, and you start looking back further than, let's say, June 1st, you're violating Hipaa. They didn't give you that permission. They told you they wanted from these certain dates. You went back knowing, honestly, just for the purposes of snooping. You never want to do that. You just want to use, disclose, or request. Let's say you're requesting from another covered entity or the business associate that you may be dealing with. Just the amount of electronic protected health information that is necessary to accomplish the task at hand. So think about it. What do you need at a minimum in order to accomplish the task at hand? That's all you should be using and disclosing. So keep in mind, even though you were given authorization to access electronic protected health information, you may not access any electronic protected health information which is not required as a function of your job responsibility at the time that you're accessing the EPHI. You may not access more electronic protected health information at a level greater than what you were granted, authorized, and or permitted. If you are granted authorization to access electronic protected health information, but you want to access the EPHI of a friend, a relative, a spouse, a neighbor, a partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, whomever, just to snoop or provide them with medical information, that's in direct violation of Hipaa. It could actually result in your employment termination. So you may have a friend that says, hey, I'm dating this person. They said they were a patient of your practice. What did they come in there for? You know what? Let me go check. Don't do that. That is bad. You may see an athlete, a celebrity, somebody famous, someone that you just know of. You want to say, what are they here for? Why are they coming in? Now, if your job duties and description require you to know that for that particular day or that particular person, that's all right. But if you're doing it just to snoop, that's not good. That's a violation of Hipaa. And even if somebody says to you, I need this information right away, and this person that's talking, by the way, is your friend, your neighbor, whomever, a family member, I need it right away. I need you to help me out. Always think with your head and not with your heart. It's very honorable of you to want to help somebody in their time of need. But you have to understand, Hipaa is controlling here. And they still have to go through the proper policies and procedures of your practice in order to get a copy of the electronic protected health information. So what you have to do is tell them, look, I'd love to help you, but I can get in trouble. And the practice can get into a lot of trouble. So why don't you come in? I'll actually have the paperwork ready for you at the desk. This way, all you have to do is come in, fill it out, and they'll put the request in for you. So long as you don't do anything that goes against your practice policies and procedures, you can help them out, but you cannot violate Hipaa. Sanctions. Pursuant to Hipaa, your practice must apply appropriate sanctions against workforce members who fail to comply with its Hipaa security policies and procedures. And these sanctions could be a written warning or, in some circumstances, the actual termination of your employment from this practice. Always remember, non-compliance with Hipaa not only greatly affects those individuals whose EPHI was improperly accessed, but the penalties for Hipaa non-compliance and or violations against your practice can range from $100 to $1.5 million for each identical violation. So again, you can have a number of violations. They're not going to stop just at 1.5. They're only going to stop at 1.5 for the identical violation. But if you have a series of violations, they could each go up to 1.5 million. And also, you could have against you criminal fines and your incarceration. Well, that's all I have for the Hipaa security training, and I thank you for listening, and I wish you the best of luck on the exam that follows. Take care.